Hello and welcome to Preconnotation Points Video Snark. We're continuing our read-through of The Plan by Qwen Salsbury. If you haven't already done so, you should watch at least the videos for the first and second chapters. And now, on to the third chapter, which is entitled Day of Employment 361. Like with the first chapter, but missing in the second, we're given a bizarre list at the start of the chapter that tells us that Emma is wearing a red dress, her wardrobe is in dire need of an upgrade, and she's somehow or another managing to kill a cactus. Emma goes into work only to find out that the latest assistant has lasted for such a short amount of time that she didn't even get to place a bet on him. She stands with one of her other co-workers and watches as the grown man tosses a knick-knack at Alaric's door. Although how he managed to be in the office long enough to have much to pack, let alone to have knickknacks, is beyond me. Then Emma's male coworker says this to Emma. All I know is I'm going to be buying some new shoes and you are still going to be wearing those bogos. He looks askance at my feet. First off, why is everybody in this series so obsessed with shoes? I'm starting to think that Salsbury has some sort of foot fetish. Second, I'm starting to get why it is that Emma's been keeping count of how many days she's been working for the company. With the revolving door of personal assistants and behavior like this from the coworkers, it's not exactly painting a very friendly work environment. Later, Emma apparently skipped lunch and dipped into her savings just to buy herself a new pair of shoes. I get splurging and treating yourself, but doing something like that because of a coworker doesn't seem healthy. And then again, nothing in this book has struck me as being overly healthy, so I don't know what I'm going on about. She then goes off in search of another coworker to give her some reports, but Emma can't find the lady, so she walks all over the office in search of her, and quickly realizes that those shoes might have been cute, but they were not meant for walking. She leans on a table to take the weight off from her aching feet and lets her shoes fall off as her butt goes up into the air. As she sits up, she realizes that she had a near brush with Alaric seeing her like that. I would ask why she didn't just go find a chair to sit in, but logic apparently was never invited to this book. Later, Emma's coworker comments on the same male coworker who made the nasty comment about Emma's shoes and who won the last bet. Emma seems to think that the male coworker, Bert, has a system, but then she realizes that maybe he's just observant. Even though in the first chapter Emma said with aching certainty that the one assistant would be on the street by 2 and she turned out to be right, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But Emma's more upset over this less because she's not winning the money or just winning in general, but simply because she thinks that she's the world's leading expert in Alaric canon, which that's not creepy at all. And then we finally start to get into some of the meat of the story. Emma has a sexual daydream about Alaric. And I knew that it was coming, but I don't think that the reviews on Goodreads were enough to prepare me for how awkward and cringy that the entire thing was. Miss Baker, is it not? His voice would spill over my shoulder, warm like coffee along my neck. Ah, yes, nothing arouses me quite like somebody spilling coffee all over me, said nobody. Ever. Anyway, her daydream consists of Alaric coming over to her after hours. He asks about spreadsheets, but makes it sound like the dirtiest thing in the entire world. He then starts to take her then and there against her desk. Most of their clothes are still on. And then one of Emma's coworkers interrupts her before it can progress any further, which I find to be an immense mercy, although I know that there will be full-on sex later. The coworker, who seems to be Emma's most direct boss, says that it's after 5 and asks Emma if she's given her too much work. Emma says that it's fine and that she's fine. Alaric leaves his office, glances briefly at the coworker, ignores Emma, and leaves. Emma leaves as well, full of embarrassment, which is incidentally my mood after having read that scene. And look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I haven't engaged in fantasies while I'm doing something inherently boring. Let me tell you about the things I would daydream about when I was in class. But here we're clearly being dropped into the middle of an unhealthy obsession. Only, judging by the way that this book is tagged on Goodreads, we're supposed to view this as being the epitome of #relationship goals. When in actuality, none of this is even remotely healthy, and forget about romantic. Anyway, let's move on to Chapter 4, aka Day of Employment 362. We begin again with the usual lists, and this one seems to indicate that Emma feels bad enough about something that she desires this sweet release that can only be found at the bottom of a bottle of alcohol. Nothing quite like alcoholism. It appears to be Friday night, and Clara is begging Emma to get dressed up, go to a bar, and let some men pay for their drinks. However, Emma says that she's not like that. Not to say that I no longer have scandalous, wild times now. Example, I routinely spend long late night hours having as many as 4 men entertain me in bed, men like Fallon, Kimmel, O'Brien, and Letterman. I had to read this, and so do you. Also, nothing quite like awkwardly dating your book by name-dropping people who haven't been on the late-night TV circuit for some time. Clara is kind of put out that Emma is kind of a fuddy-duddy and asks her if she even has, and I quote, fancy clothes anymore. She looks through Emma's closet and asks about something covered in feathers. And reading this, and I'm struck with a sudden and odd bit of thought. I still don't quite know either way if this is pulled to publish Twilight fanfiction or not, but it sure does make a lot of sense. A bland insert your face here MC and her quirky, obnoxious, fashion-obsessed friend. And trust me when I say that I use the word friend here very loosely. Emma thinks about the absurd amount of money that she spent on textbooks when she was at university, and about how there wasn't even a point to trying to sell them back to the school's bookstore. And I get it, been there, done that. But what exactly does this have to do with the story? Nothing as far as I can tell. It's almost like Salsbury had a thought and just randomly wrote down anything that popped into her mind. I'm not going to knock that as a way of writing, but you're supposed to take the garbage out when you're editing. Clara then asks about the company ball, which leads down a weird rabbit hole about what Emma's going to wear. Clara then offers her a crystal shoe while calling her Amarella, as a play-off of Cinderella. Later, it's 1 a.m. and Emma is studying. Well, maybe all that constant word vomit about university classes and textbooks that the book keeps throwing at us is actually relevant. Would have been nice to know before being bombarded with out-of-context, out-of-place musings about such things. Again, I feel like a proper editor would have really helped Salsbury clean up this story. Of course, a good editor would have told her that this story was complete and utter garbage and belonged in the bin, but here we are. Clara comes into the room, drunk as a skunk, but having apparently gone on a shopping spree. She takes some of the things out, which Emma describes as being from Fredericks of Hollywood. I do wish there were assless chaps. Not that I would wear them, but there is nothing funnier than the word assless chaps. But tangentially, answer me this. Do chaps actually have ass? Ha ha ha. Because nothing's quite as funny as people who literally have no idea what something is. Emma is not exactly enthusiastic about the less-than-wanted gift of so many pieces of lingerie, but she knows that Clara will not leave her alone until she looks through the items. A bra so padded it could be doubled as a Muppet. I would have to refer to my breasts as Kermit and Fozzie. Can we not book? Also, I had to read this, and so do you. Why is this book an endless supply of me saying that I had to read it, and so do you? Do you think that Salsbury actually sat around and thought of awkward things to write, or do you honestly think that she just finds things like this amusing? As mentioned, Emma is less than happy with the items that Clara brought, although looking at them closer, she's even less happy than before. She knows that she'd never wear them, ever. This only just seems to upset Clara, who leaves in a snit. And I hate the chapters with Emma constantly mooning over Ulrich. But you want to know what I hate even more? Clara. From this point on, just picture me gritting my teeth with a vein popping on my forehead whenever she shows up. She's so annoying. At least the chapters with Emma at work at least try to move the story along, but whenever Emma is with Clara, it's like the brakes of the story are slammed on and literally nothing gets done.